Morning, Hong Kong Free Press from Wang Fuk Court here in Tai Po. A heavy atmosphere, as you might imagine. We are 7 days into this situation whereby there will be Buddhist traditional rites of passage happening today between noon and 2 p.m. And it's still relatively busy. Some of the volunteers here have told me, and yeah, I'd say a couple of hundred people. There's a podium just behind us here, flowers that have been gathered at the bottom, with Wang Fuk Court in the background, and you can see just about how the fire began at the furthest tower. 7 of the 8 towers ablaze last Wednesday, spread to the other ones, all but one of the other towers. The very latest is the Chief Executive John Lee this morning said there will be an independent probe. The nature of that probe, whether it's really going to dig down into any deficiencies in government, is not really clear at the moment. We're going to be asking. We don't know if they're going to use a particular ordinance that is in place to conduct these independent probes, but it will have a judge overseeing it. We also learned that the Patriots-only election on Sunday is going to go ahead, despite the situation here and despite the civil service possibly being quite stretched at the moment. They're going to press on, he said, so that lawmakers can be in place to enact the plans they have for the families for Wang Fuk Court here. The thing that strikes you, obviously, as you're coming from the MTR, the roads are closed, a lot of people, mourners are coming in over the footbridges, is how quiet it is. It's like a library or something. It's a very solemn atmosphere, and people, some of them in tears, just peacefully writing messages, or quietly talking to each other, bringing offerings. And as my staff have seen over recent days, it's been like that for the last few nights, busying up in the evenings as people get off work. Bit of misreporting perhaps as to how police sort of intervened in these grassroots kind of efforts, morning efforts, relief efforts. In reality, a lot of those families affected had already gone to shelters, temporary housing, but there is, a presence of volunteers I've spoken to just now who didn't want to talk about their interactions with the police, but say that they're able to offer counselling and snacks and things just below the podium behind us, which we'll have a look at later. So the latest figures, if you saw HKFP last night, we have 151 people dead as announced by a couple of officers last night, quite tearfully describing the situation inside inside the complex with firefighters now left. It's the police identification unit who are going flat to flat to try and find bodies, which they are finding in staircases, on the roof, in flats. Some very grim stories. It's very dark in there, and actually one of the cops broke down recounting what the situation looks like. They have cleared 5 of the towers. There are 2 more left to go, but those are the toughest ones. I guess is the final 2 you can see in the background there, where the fire began and was at its most ferocious. 79 is the latest figures we have on the number injured, and over 30 still missing as of last night. Around here, you do see also posters for missing pets. There have been dozens brought out, but safely. People mourning their pets as well as people. Hope you can hear me, by the way. As well as relatives lost. We are doing a deeper dive interview just this morning with a family, elderly people, who they lost their neighbours but made a lucky escape because the dad in the family made frantic calls to get them out of here. The 9-year-old whose birthday it is today, they fear may have, PTSD from the experience, and certainly some in the family can't even look at the set of stairs at the moment, having scrambled around with the power cut happening halfway down to get out. But at least for that family, they're all out and thinking more about the long term. And obviously a lot of people gathered here have been thinking about justice as well. Talking of which, John Lee, of course, saying will be an independent probe. Moving on, 1,144 people now moved into transitional housing, 683 staying in youth hostels, camps, hotel rooms. If you check the website, there's no hotel rooms, obviously in the area at the moment. Thousands have been gathering since the weekend. Among the dead now, there are 9 Indonesian and 1 Filipino domestic worker. You'll see some of the signs in Tagalog in Bahasa Indonesia as you go around this sitting out area, actually. There are parks around here as well where there's some morning activity. So it was last Wednesday when the deadly blaze broke out, just before 3 o'clock. A number 5 alarm, that is the highest alarm in Hong Kong, the first in 17 years, in a city where it was thought we'd got a grip of incidents and fire safety, things like this. But as a historical explainer we put up on Sunday notes, there is more than a century of history of deadly blazes across Hong Kong. And, it's a city that is based on laissez-faire, few regulations, this kind of thing. But when hundreds have been killed either at Happy Valley Racecourse 100-odd years ago, or at some of the squatter developments in the 50s, particularly in the 50s, the city got serious about fire safety. But I think one of the things we will be delving into, and one of my reporters is going to be doing an explainer on, is the building committees that are often found to be rather corrupt in terms of bid rigging, price fixing, backhanders. John Lee spoke about that this morning, and we'll be looking into whether the authorities are actually going to be cracking down on these kinds of activities in the months and years to come. So Wang Fuk Court was under renovation, as you can see, and bamboo scaffolding, which certainly caught the attention of the international media because, wood versus metal, it probably doesn't look good to those outside of Hong Kong, and many of Hong Kong will tell you it's stronger than steel, and it's very versatile bamboo in terms of the weird and unusual shapes that you may have to build when you are constructing a city with such insane density as Hong Kong. Many say the city is created through bamboo, it's a city made on bamboo scaffold. So the narrative moved on quite quickly as to what the cause was. Many pointed to the netting that was found to be safe, and then it was found to be unsafe. Just yesterday, the ICAC was looking at the situation, and it was found that portions of the netting, particularly higher up, were not found to be fire compliant. And it does seem authorities say there has been some shenanigans on the part of the construction company. In recent weeks, we've reported on a few fires involving bamboo scaffolding renovations. Way less dramatic than this, but it seemed that when non-compliant netting was used here, the construction company allegedly panicked. They went to buy some compliant netting, but then they only wrapped the lower parts of the buildings in that fire-safe netting in order to pass inspections. And the last inspection called by the government was just a week before this happened. So authorities may also be victims of what the construction company has sought to pull here. As a result of those probes, 13 people have been arrested for suspected manslaughter. That's 12 men, 1 woman, aged between 40 and 77. They're all linked to the construction, the renovation in some way, or consultants. Separately, the anti-corruption watchdog, the ICAC, has arrested 12 people. 11 of those arrested were also arrested by the police. Again, construction consultants, scaffolding contractors. And separately to those arrests related to the cause of the blaze, there's been at least a couple of arrests for inciting hatred of the government for sedition. An AFP reporter tried to ask John Lee about this morning. He got very cross about people, he said, that were hijacking the situation. But one case that stands out, which we still cannot get an answer about from the police, I got an email from them last night, is to whether Miles, a student from CUHK, was actually arrested after he distributed leaflets calling for accountability and pointing the finger at the government. So who knows what the red lines will be as we suffer this first tragedy, really, that we have seen in the security law era. In China, obviously, whether you look at the Sichuan earthquake, a Shanghai train incident, and other natural disasters across the country, there is often, some space for people to mourn in the immediate aftermath, but there are usually quite strict controls implemented very quickly with regards to the media, and when it comes to the people affected, their standing in terms of calls for accountability or any efforts to organise or point the finger further than the local authorities tends to be limited, to put it politely. But then again, you also see punishment for local officials up to the death sentence when it comes to shenanigans, when with regards to construction that was deemed to be dangerous, faulty, or has caused trouble. Beijing itself has stepped in recent days and said that anti-China disruptors will feel the full force of the security law if they incite resentment against the government. Meanwhile, the local authorities, they are conducting inspections of similar sites across the city. 30 projects linked to the company that's linked to the Wang Fuk court renovation have seen their construction sites suspended. So aside from the netting we spoke about, styrofoam foam board that was placed on top, outside of some of the windows, is also being pointed at as an exacerbating factor in the spread of the fire. 7 of those 20 construction netting samples were found to have failed safety standards. So that seems to be the main area they're looking at. On to what the government is doing to support the families. 1.2 billion, I'm not sure if that's gone up this morning, has been raised, partly government funds, at least 900 million from Hong Kongers donating to that fund. 1,420 affected households have already received 10,000 Hong Kong dollars in emergency cash relief. Over 1,800 have registered for the subsidy. Again, that may have gone up a little bit this morning. And the next step is $200,000 condolence money for the families of victims, families of people who had someone lose their lives in the incident, and 50,000 for each of the households affected. Domestic workers and workers who were involved in this will also benefit from those handouts. And as we know, government workers have now taken over much of the on-the-ground grassroots support efforts after the community swooped in. And finally, the government has said it is continuing with Sunday's election. Who knows if there's going to be some arrangement for those who lost their homes out here and all documentation. So here we are at Wang Fuk Court, a very typical housing development of 4,000 units that was home to 2,000 families under renovation for over a year, of which each of the units were paying well over $100,000. Some still have mortgages and are concerned about debt. But as much as there is seemingly a lot of money and aid flying around at the moment, the main thing in the long term, a lot of the families will be seeking beyond these bailouts, is justice. So we will see if this seemingly independent investigation has any teeth, if it will look beyond the construction firm, and if we're really going to see a revamp and restructuring of how the Lands Tribunal works when it comes to complaints regarding building committees, and perhaps a look at how those building committees work and some of the corrupt practices that we know happen when it comes to large construction revamps, renovations like this. I'm going to give you a brief tour of the site here. I'll leave my commentary minimal because it's, like I say, very quiet atmosphere as people pouring in. Several hundred with white flowers, tribute funeral flowers, and we're expecting in the next hour or two some Buddhist rituals, being the 7th day since this deadly blaze in Tai Po. So let's give you a little bit of a tour of some of the messages. I should mention actually there are some on-site counsellors, some volunteers who have been comforting people. Teddy bears left messages in 3 or 4 languages actually. Some of them calling for justice. What is a life worth to you? May you rest in peace. Japanese, Bahasa Indonesia, Tagalog. Sympathy to you and your family at the difficult time. French even, and a few signs in English. Origami swans, peace offering. You see more often in Japan, perhaps. Hello. Been put up everywhere today. A few Christian groups leading prayer dotted around. Paper and pens for people to leave their tributes and messages. I'd say about half the people wearing black, people in tears comforting each other to my left. And here, hundreds of floral tributes, some of the media, some folks taking photos in disbelief, some quietly praying, some sobbing. And in fact, between this point and the rest of the park, it's just a sea of bouquets, flowers, teddy bears, all the way out of the sitting out area in a neighbouring estate to the base of the 8 towers of Wang Fuk Court. Here's some Buddhist chanting in the background, some offerings, white flowers, Tibetan prayer flags. Police media liaison are here. And a Buddhist ritual ceremony set to happen in the next hour or two. We're going to leave it here in Tai Po. You can expect us to be reporting independently for the days, weeks, months and years as Hong Kong comes to terms with what went down last Wednesday here in Tai Po. Thank you for tuning in.